We don't really need priority speak. We can just start without.
Yeah, everyone's
We can
muted.
give everyone a little bit, and then we will start.
Yep. No, I'm not using push to talk. This is terrible.
Just gonna breathe deeply into my mic.
That no mic channel going off to a great start.
Who you calling PvE abuser?
Okay, I'm gonna pull up questions for Q&A now. And I'll go from the top to the bottom.
All right.
I love how half the questions became irrelevant after the update.
It's okay.
It's a shocker, real
It's
shocker.
like, when is Heal Kit Fusion gonna come out? And then it's like Q&A.
We're gonna move
yesterday.
that ticker back another 2 months. Are we good to start?
Let me get my OBS ready. All right, go.
All right. I assume that
we'll
everyone's
cut
here.
this.
So, hi everyone. First, I'd like to thank you guys for taking a small part of your weekend to join us for this. And I'd also like to extend just a little bit of a thanks to the council administration for helping us organize this and setting it up. These interactions with you guys are some of the most useful and reflective for us when we work on this game mode. It's been quite a bit of time since we've actually addressed a community like this before. And since the last time we spoke, Mindsy and Chapo to that extent have drastically changed. Obviously from Doc's departure to the onboarding of countless new developers, staff, builders, I think that we truly are moving in a better direction than Chapo has been in years. And as you guys know, progress started very slowly, and there were definitely a lot of bumps along the way. And we've made some mistakes since then, but we had to learn to crawl, then walk, and then run. I'd say today we're pretty much running. And there are a lot of people who have spent countless hours since then, but we're not here to thank them today. There have been a lot of questions on roadmaps, and while I'm not really addressing that right now, I do feel like it is extremely important to make it very clear to you guys the previous lead developer's goals were never attainable in his time frame. That includes the roadmap that he gave to you guys. We believe that some of his ideas that he was very vocal about never really aligned with your guys' interests. And as I've stated before, anything that Doc promised you guys was likely never going to be finished. And that's not really to say that we won't pick some of those features up and complete those for you guys, but what you guys see will not be what he promised. It'll be something that is carefully tested and vetted by you guys. It's not going to be made in the dark like his was. And for that reason, it's important for you guys to recognize that and move forward without his roadmap. What we talk about today, I think, will answer a lot of questions and concerns that you guys have had. The questions that we respond to have been selected by the Mindsy Council Administration, and we're going to try to answer as many of those as we can. All that we really ask of you guys is to have a civil and respectful conversation.
All right, we ready?
I believe so.
All right. iSwampy asks, have you been thinking about removing the 8 armor bar, the 8 armor points, and putting it back to 7.5? He states, it's okay if pristine chain is as good as iron since it was good as normal chain too.
In regards to iron armor being
Iron
armor.
armor having 8, the iron helmet giving the extra.
I go both ways because we need to have a gap between pristine chain and iron a little bit. But with Marine and I recently looking back at our damage numbers and everything, the gap between chain and pristine chain is larger than it should be. So we'll have to do some balancing on the armor bars between chain and pristine chain first, and then look at iron. So it's possible, but we need to do some numbers, and so that's kind of where that stands at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Have you guys been thinking about... Oh, sorry. iSwampy asks, have you guys been thinking about maybe buffing damage and or finally updating the splashes to 4 hearts like everyone of the community wanted according to that poll?
I'm going to make it clear, because I know we've talked about it. 4 heart splashes is not something we want to do. 3.5 maybe. But we have the knock or the velocity changes of potions. We're working on that. We need to do some testing with it and get some people on and test it. With that change, the actual usage of splashes might feel better, and that's kind of the direction I want to go with it first. And if it's not enough, then we can go up to 3.5, but that's the limit. 4 heart splashes inherently, I think, are too much, and I think just I don't know. I think it gates PvP too much behind splashes.
Thank you. Zorak the Great asks, will the staff team be willing to be more open regarding certain high-profile blacklisted individuals? Is there hope for them? And if so, can we get a time frame? Some individuals who come to mind are OMs, Connor, Cyclone, and Red. Thank you. I know this is a polarizing topic, but I feel it needs to be voiced, according to Zorak.
I don't really want to get into the blacklist discussion in this debate.
That's fine.
Or this discussion in general.
No, that's fine.
I mean, every case we go through manually and one at a time. And I mean, the best that they can do is appeal when they think that there's been enough time. And then we'll discuss it internally and they'll get a response based on what we think at the time.
To Rory asks, are you going to make 1.16 mandatory? If so, why?
I'll let Halo answer this question.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this has been something that various members of the community have been concerned about, and it's something that different members of the staff team have talked about. You've definitely seen there are some game modes that are tested in exclusively 1.16, though I don't think that this is something necessarily that we need to worry about for the next couple of months. When we get, I think, into 2021, it'll become more of a discussion, but right now it's purely talks, and I don't think anyone has any interest in moving to a unstable version until, one, we get more support for it, and two, we become more confident in that version. I also don't think that it's necessarily in the best interest for MindZ to move to 1.16 alone. So I'm personally not for it, and I think that's sort of where the administration is right now. There's definitely game modes that I think will be better suited for 1.16, like Warband and some currently in developed games, but I think games possibly like Annihilation and MindZ aren't going to gain anything from moving there besides possibly new Redstone and some features. I think that it's just not something that can be reliably done in the near future.
Smire12 asks, can we get a word on dungeons? Are we going to see any new open or even the return of Escalosco, Frostbane? How are the reworks of Frostbane, Animos, and Polisher coming? Is there a chance for older legendaries? And lastly, how is the rework of Swamp coming along? It would be cool if there was finally a reason to go there. And you forgot to mention Hell on Earth.
So I'll cover the builds and dungeon portion of it, and then we can go over to Marine for legendary stuff. I believe that Pinefrost, also known as Frosty, put a little blurb in Dungeons chat recently. Currently, I guess between the months of October to December, the build team takes a break and develops a lot of new builds and locations for seasonal stuff. So Halloween to Christmas is sort of what our focus is. I think right now all of those dungeons are sort of on hold. We're sort of gassed on doing dungeon work. And I know that there's been a lot of requests for dungeons like Excelesco and Frostbane, Polister, Animos to be redone, but that's not something I'm going to force my team to do if they don't want to. If I force them to do a location like that, especially a massive dungeon location, the end result is never going to be good for you guys. So even if it was redone, it wouldn't be fun. And there have been a lot of new ideas and sections built for different dungeons, but it's just not on our radar right now. I think the thing that we're moving from is, now that we're done with Halloween, as far as like a building wise, we are transitioning to a month of Christmas stuff and then new November builds and stuff like that. I think it would be more likely to see that kind of thing. And then if we get into January, we'll probably shift our focus back to doing normal MindZ things. But right now, it's just building fun things with the community for the next couple of months.
Marie, would you like me to ask the question again? Is Marine here?
Yeah, Marine's dead.
Okay.
Oh.
Marine, Smire asks, maybe is there possibly a chance for older legendaries to return? He
Yeah,
puts
definitely.
Rabbit's Feet, Hurstbike,
Yeah,
or
we
in
have the
Spikers
code.
or as examples?
We have the code. We just have to rebalance it because all those old legendaries are from 2013, and their abilities are very outdated, and that they just don't fit to the current MindZ. Yeah, but we will be discussing relocating legendaries, retiring some legendaries, or returning old legendaries to the game. So it's going to happen. Yes.
Thank you. And definitely talk about in legendaries ideas you have for returning legendaries, guys. You can always throw a suggestion to Marine or other staff about legendary ideas you guys have. Anyway, Neon Crow asks, or sorry, Len asks, is there going to be a general priorities update, like the understanding of what the priorities are in the future, such as in-game giant rework, spawn kit changes, etc.? Oh, sorry, listed to communities. Sorry, I should be clear on that.
I'll let Halo kind of preface this answer.
Yeah. As I mentioned at the very beginning, obviously we've requested you guys to ignore Doc's roadmap. I mean, at this point, it's 2 years old, but I understand that without that, you're sort of in the dark on exactly what to expect. The past couple of months for us have been a lot of quality of life and smaller features, so like new mobs, all of these extra bug fixes and stuff like that, which really needed our attention. And I guess as we move to the next couple of months, it's time to start looking at some larger features. Now, with Mojang's announcement of forced migration of your accounts, obviously there was a big push for bank, and that's something that we're working on now. And our hope is to get that to you guys before that becomes a big issue. Obviously, a lot of you guys have invested years and have countless accounts stored across the map, holding items from all the way back in 2012 or 13, and those aren't things we want you to lose. So I would say that the bank is a very large priority, but there's also another priority that we have right now, and that is reducing the lag. I mean, you guys have seen it, uh, especially over I think the past 2 weeks or so, there have been intermittent lag spikes. And thanks to Shadow, we found a couple of those, but we have to focus on a little bit more. I'm focusing on that right now. As Shadow said, there are issues that come up when instances are loaded and stuff like that. So we need to refactor that, and we'll probably release more information on that in the coming weeks, either in council or as a post to describe what we want to do with that. But each developer sort of has their own project now that I think sort of extends longer than just a quality of life fix or a small feature change. I mean, for example, you've got Instant who's actively working on clans and has updated you on that. Now, if the request is to give an ETA on that, I don't really think that's something that any of us can really say. I know that Instant has a lot of desires to get that into your hands. I know that Shadow has just transitioned from a lot of this lag fixing and is starting to pick up a new project. I've also just picked up a new project after getting off of treat chest work. I just don't think that I want to provide you guys with a false roadmap and then come back after like a month and say we need to change our view from this project to this project. But I think the general things that we're looking at right now are clans, banks, and fixing lag.
Dion Crow asks, why do certain updates have to wait until other updates are finished to be released, such as little quality of life things or other things that have been a problem in the past?
When you talk about how MindZ development works, you have to think about it on a couple different fronts. So for one, there's game balancing, which is largely my job with a couple of the other staff members. Then there's development, which I've been taking up a little bit too, but all the developers in MindZ now. And then there's the map. The way we currently have our workflow is it starts from either development going on to MindZ dev, or we have MindZ build for the map going on to MindZ dev. And then when we're ready for a release, we pretty much click a button and MindZ dev rolls to live and rebuilds all the live servers with a new update. That's our current structure. And that's kind of why when you have a request or something ask for, a small balance change like a new chest or something at Frostbane or something, we need to have clearance from all the people who utilize MindZ dev to make sure we can push it out because of how our revision control and version control and everything works. and just to make sure we don't put out incomplete things, which we have done before. And I think Worley was the last one that was the big example of when something went
yes.
out by accident. So there's an example of kind of how the workflow process goes, and we can't just roll one without the other. It's all kind of like in a package. It just goes out to the game. So it's kind of the idea of that.
Okay. Chow Monster asks, have you thought of possibly having settlements again?
So after I finish clans, I want to eventually, at least currently, want to work on clan halls. And in my current thinking, I would think clan halls would be sort of a settlements-like thing, but you have your own instance instead. And I'd like to somehow incorporate PvP into that in the future.
That's cool. Goliath asks, is Escalesco... Sorry, that's not the question. Goliath asks, what will the banks be like? I know it's not set in stone yet, but if we can get an idea of them, that would be great.
It's a design question, and we're still kind of figuring out what we want to do with banks specifically. I mean, you can use a couple other games as examples of what a bank could look like. I think the main thing to keep in mind is that there were some promises for unlimited storage of X type of item or a finite number of storage for another type of item. Personally, I don't see any like how an infinite storage would work. I can definitely see how a scaling storage that you will increase your space over the course of time or tasks or something like that. But of course, we haven't actually, set in stone our actually idea of a bank yet, and that's part of the reason why we're having this Q&A today. Try and figure out what we want to do, and then we have a meeting following this to kind of just discuss our next steps. So nothing concrete as of yet.
Here's a fun question. Orca Hezrel asks, why was Treetop Shelter removed, and is there any chance for it to be re-added?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, when we redid the jungle, we removed treetop shelter. Partly by design. You might see it again, but you're not going to see it in the same location. And there is something that goes roughly in that area that we hope you'll see soon, but I don't think that it's worth crying over spilled milk. You're going to get something better.
Thank you. Andrew64MC asks, are rumors that alts will be disallowed after introduction of the bank true? Many of us have 20 plus accounts holding items that I'm not sure will fit.
Depends on what we decide with the bank. I have no actual intentions to limit or ban alts, but I do want to see what the game looks like when we get closer to the migration overhaul that Mojang is enforcing and Microsoft. So that's still a discussion that we need to have. As of right now, I have nothing to say on the topic except that we are evaluating it as I guess that could be considered a possibility, but I wouldn't call it likely because I don't want to just remove alts from the game entirely. So
I think that a lot of the leverage the alts bring are sort of dampened by an actual working bank system, because the bank sort of takes the place of an alt and also is much safer to use since, in theory, it would be in a PvE area. So the likelihood of needing to log another account on would be a moot point if you could just open up your bank instead.
Thank you. Thermite Z asks, what is the reasoning behind unblacklisted players not being allowed to use alts? How do you determine how long players have to wait until they can use alts again? Is it consistent or is it case by case?
Definitely case by case.
Yeah.
Um,
Like with any case, it's case by case. Go ahead, Marine.
to answer the first question, why do they have to use one account? Take that as some sort of punishment that you're still allowed to play, but with some restrictions. As you continue playing, and following the rules, and we start gaining trust, we're slowly gonna allow them to have more accounts, and eventually, in the future, maybe they can have access to all of their banned accounts. The time frame is really case by case. Jacob, what's like the average time that we normally allow another account?
It's kind of anywhere between 3 to 6 months, depending on their behavior and how everything goes. It's kind of generally how I go about it. But it's still case by case ultimately. But somewhere in there is an average.
That will be our last blacklist question. I'm sorry that I asked that one again, or asked another blacklist question. Goliath asks, with MineZ2 mobs getting added into the game, are there any plans for adding some of the MineZ2 mechanics in the game too? Murky/purified water, armor and weapon upgrades, furnaces/anvils having purpose, etc.
I think that you could see maybe shadows of those features. I think one of the beauties of MineZ is that at its core you can play the game simpler. And I think one of the downfalls of MineZ2 was that it leaned too far into those MMORPG mechanics that forced you to grind the game for even basic things. So I've always liked the idea that you could, in theory, play the game any way that you wanted, and you wouldn't have to boil your water, craft your armor, do all these things. And what I would like to see MineZ do is sort of create a lighter system for that for some different areas. I don't necessarily think like leveling up your sword or something like that is attainable in the near future, or anything like MineZ2 did with an intricate crafting system. But I think that you could definitely see new features be added that maybe harken back to some of the things that people did like in MineZ2.
Yeah, and Laser himself even said like the downfall of MineZ2 was like he focused on just putting as many mechanics into there as possible instead of gameplay.
I agree.
Also, regarding it ever coming back, I don't think it would be a good thing for it to come back. We could take some of their features, sure, but if we added MineZ2, then it would be splitting the player base of MineZ.
Gigolo asks, when will new dungeons be added or new legendaries?
Kind of already answered this question.
We
I
kind of
know.
have. We could rehash it. Obviously, we've added some legendaries that are dropped ambiently throughout the world that you don't have to do a dungeon for. I think that new legendaries can be added regardless of new dungeons, whether that comes in the form of enhancing a rather useless legendary right now, or adding a new one that you can get separately from any other thing in the world besides a dungeon. Those, for the most part, are relatively unplanned until we have a really good idea, like one of those aha moments, and then we test it out and see what that's like and if the community would like that. As far as new dungeons, there are obviously Dark Deeds is something that players know about. We teased it a while ago. Then there was the Dock event, and that got put on the back burner. I also voiced earlier this week that one of the pitfalls from Dark Deeds is that we're waiting on one very large dungeon build to be completed that we've not been able to do yet. We really hope eventually to get that done. Obviously, I'd like to get it done before 2020, but it is a very hard design that we want, and there's a very specific vision for how this update comes together. And I think it would be doing a disservice to you guys to either change it so that we don't need that dungeon, or to modify it so that it's no longer the vision that we have for it. There are, of course, options for a lot of smaller dungeons, but again, those are if the builder wants to do it. I can't force them to go and rework another dungeon. A lot of it comes from motivation, whether it be given from players that create content to a game that they're playing at the time.
Thank you. Aladdin wants to, Free Rob Deal wants to rehash his question. Which of the following are things that the staff team is still considering / planning, and which has been set aside indefinitely / canceled entirely? This is having to do with Dog's roadmap.
Sure.
Milestones, hardcore mode, wanted system / bounties, spawn kit changes, character system / profiles. Character systems being bolded.
Yeah, I think what I want to focus on the most is milestones. Doc did tease milestones a lot. When Laser came on, we had a lot of talks about what the future of advancements for players should look like. And we really didn't see the need to create milestones. And I'll explain why. Right now you have thousands of players that have Mindsy stats loaded. In order to move to milestones, you would need to transition all of those player stats to a new system, hope it works 100% flawlessly, and then create a new system. Now, Mindsy stats as a system actually works very well. It would be much better to flesh that system out and really give that flair than to try to create a new system and then force everyone onto that one. What our hope is to flesh Mindsy stats out in the near future and sort of create an image that is better for the player of milestones than Doc promised. As far as hardcore mode, I don't remember Doc talking about this a whole lot, but he did talk about a lot of different ideas very openly. I don't think hardcore mode is necessarily something that we're going to focus on. I would rather work on enhancing the current game instead of creating a splintered game for those that want a harder experience. For the rest of these, I think these are things that Jacob could talk about.
You want to rehash or re-say those real quick for me?
Wanted system
I'm
and bounties.
going to put them on the bottom of questions for Q&A. Milestones, hardcore mode, wanted system / bounties, spawn kit changes, character system / profiles. I believe spawn kit changes and character system are the ones that are still needing to be answered.
Character system, we don't have any plans for a character system at the moment. Of course, that's a discussion when we talk about removing alts or a little bit with the bank, but the bank can happen without a character system. And I know at one point, either Doc or some people in the community understood the bank system as the character system as well, and removal of alts, kind of all in one bundle. And simply put, we're not doing that. I don't want to just remove alts without a character system. I don't want to just make the bank and then force you to not use alts, something like that. So yeah, the character system is not on our radar right now, and I don't know when it will be. Spawn kit changes. I'm assuming this is in regards to having a way to organize your spawn kit. I think if it is,
I believe it is too.
If it is, then I don't know if we have any immediate plans for this either. That's a question for if a dev wants to pick that up and work on that. And wanted system and bounties. We could. Definitely is an interesting concept. But like Halo started the whole Q&A with is, all of the original, I guess, ideas that Doc may have had in the channels and everything in council. If that was one that was brought up, it's not one we've discussed as of recent. So at the moment, I don't think there's any plans for that.
Okay. Aladdin, does that work for you, or hang on? Okay, I believe that works for him. We can go back on it if it doesn't, though. Andrew64MC asks, why can't we get a giant spawn in the west?
I'm working on it. No, but actually I want one there, and I've talked about this quite a bit. I have an idea of one, and I think I'm working with Ivan, one of our builders, on it. So we'll see. Definitely is something I want. I've wanted it for a little while. And then they removed the island, North Vass, Vermont. No, it's fine. We have a better spot for it anyways if we do put one there, which I am working on it.
I'm trying to read this question Katoa has right now, making sure I ask it right. Thoughts on old Roseluck type dungeons before the safe room was patched? Will we ever see a dungeon with minimal gearing requirements and T4 chests, or chests that resemble T4 chests?
I mean, the whole, I guess this I'm going to kind of break off from that and kind of run with the idea of dungeon loot for a minute, because this is something I hear about about every hour. But the whole idea of dungeon loot is flawed in a little bit of ways right now, and I need to sit down and rebuild how we tier dungeons a little bit. I've shared our sort of basic system we follow. I didn't share all the details, but currently, and I do want to remedy this, there is not a calculation for how far north a dungeon is, which is something I do want to integrate into how we tier a dungeon. So that would change how loot works. And I also do have kind of like a rolling idea for loot. So if you complete a dungeon that's tier 3, but kind of has some tier 4 elements, you may have a couple tier 4 chests. I know Schrager is big on his graph of loot.
It's outdated now.
Well, in a way, it still has some good things to follow. So I do want to work on dungeon loot. I know we talked about Zerbia, and that was supposed to be done. That wasn't done because I figured we need to actually do something to dungeon balance in general. So that's something. Once we get through Halloween, I'm going to sit down and work on loot while everybody's churning out Christmas and possibly bank features.
Okay.
So.
Oswald has 3 questions.
Yes, and actually, before you even answer that, sorry that I unmuted my mic.
You're
I
good.
was just
No, you're
wondering
good.
if anyone was recording this conversation, because I was genuinely about to walk out. So I
I
was gonna
am.
come back and maybe you are. Are you gonna
Mhm.
like upload this or anything like that?
I will work with Navarre and Mystery on how we want to release this if we do. So.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Let me. All right, give me like 10 seconds.
Okay.
All right. So I kind of came up with this idea a little bit ago. I think it was like maybe 6 or 7 months. But this question is directly towards the builders. And I was wondering if there would be an expansion of the caves, and specifically north of Real, connecting to Cave of the Dead Lady, Cave of the Dead Lady west to the Mantle Ravine, and have like some lava cave type things that we saw in 9Z2. And then west of Baratheum Caverns, connecting to like Loreful Mines, and then west of that to like Forest. I was wondering if that was a possibility. So
I'm
we'll
happy to
start with
talk
that
about
question
this.
first.
The last update that we did with Doc, I had teased that there were 2 areas that the cartographer was going to visit, and these were biome overhauls that I was going to do. One of them was a trip with the cartographer through the cave system, which was hinting at a full cave system overhaul that I had been working on. Obviously, when Doc left, it shifted all of my responsibilities and time to working to manage the server. Now, I'm hoping to get someone back on that because that was something that I really felt needed to happen for the game. One, because one of the other areas would facilitate faster travel throughout the world, and the cave system would definitely fix a lot of the problems that we're seeing with it. I think would actually make it worth traveling in the caves, one, and provide a better system for gearing up in the caves as well. I wish I could tell you more, but I don't know when that would be done. I hope that it's something that one of the builders will pick up,
Yes.
though.
I'm not sure if my next question was already answered. I'll honestly just skip it because I have a feeling that someone else already asked it, and it was just about Marine was updating legendaries, specifically the Truth Bow, that kind of stuff. I was just wondering if there was any more legendary updates in the near future, and it could be a quick answer, quick response.
Yeah, I'm literally working on it right now while listening to you. So yeah.
All right, sweet, that's perfect. So that answers
So,
that question.
Um,
Go ahead.
yeah. So I've been testing the new legendaries on GG. Let's say the vampire has a slightly different effects on GG, which increases the healing chance if your health is low. I'm planning to discuss it with you guys and probably roll that because I think the current vampire is just worse than a D-sword, to be honest. So that's gonna be my first.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's
Hate
honestly
roll.
worse than Iron Sword. Okay, so that's a good response. I like that answer. And then next question. I know Jacob, you were talking about this like 5 minutes ago. With the like alting rules and bank and stuff like that. If that were to change, what would happen to players with multiple premium accounts? I know that like myself, I have
This was
2.
already answered. I can
Oh,
explain to you later.
it was okay.
I can
Perfect.
explain it later.
Yep.
To you.
I was in the shower, so that's probably why I missed it. And then my most important question, I've kind of been nagging about this for the past like forever. In regards to advertising, what is the staff team doing to increase the player base and keeping players to stay on the network?
I don't know if you've noticed, but there has been 2 key things that have happened so far, which I'm able to share publicly. There's a lot more under the hood that's been in very many discussions with network leadership and High Life specifically too. But we put out marketing applications. That was a process by Mystery. I helped with that a little bit. We've since brought in several members of the team. You've probably seen them hunting around in the Shoppa Discord.
Yeah.
So that is a big step for us to get some of the load off of Mystery, because he's already busy enough and he has to manage a lot just to keep us running day to day. So we're giving some of the load to willing members of the community, and we have, all I can say is that we have some pretty exciting things, probably closer than some of you may think, and that's all I can say. So
Okay.
that's hopefully going to give you guys some hope for the next few months going
Yeah.
forward.
I understand. Like like you said, I've seen people get the like media role, like the new roles that were given out because of the applications that Mystery developed. But I was kind of more so wondering, is there like a certain date like all these game modes would maybe finish? I know Warband is actually a really great idea for a game mode, and I was wondering if like you guys were waiting for that big update to start pushing advertising. Like I was wondering if that was kind of like
We are
a
waiting
thing.
for a few things. There's not a hard date right now. But it's
A
just
lot
kind
of
of like,
a lot of the development on those games really, I don't know if that's really beholden to any timeline. A lot of those are, does the dev feel like it's ready to go out? I don't really know if, judging by Warband or any of the other test games that are in various stages of production, is the best way to think about media communication.
Okay. And then I was also wondering about minor things as well. I know that there's constant events on the MindZ server, and then there's like a Koth on GG, also like the Anti-Clan Wars. But is there also any way we can get maybe other stuff to see? So maybe there's just like an event server for the entire server, or just hosting an event on like a certain game mode, and then like the winner would receive like an XP prize or something along those
I
lines.
think we're deviating a little bit away from the MindZ Q&A, but we've had discussions is all I can really say on that topic.
You've also seen some small events too here and there, and that's really based off of like generous players that are sponsoring these events and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
If that's something that you're interested in, you can talk to Mystery about it. I know that we've had some players that have been like, I want to give away platinum or something like that, host an event.
Shout out to Tyler, yeah. Okay. Yeah, sorry for striving away from the MindZ Q&A. I just
It's okay.
yeah. More of a
Let's
network
just get
thing.
back on topic. All right. The Express 44 asks, it's more of a statement and then a question. It feels like as soon as a legendary becomes meta in PvP, it's nerfed until it's practically unusable. Instead of small tweaks or adding counters, he cites Vampirs, Corsairs, etc. He states there should be an incentive to use legendaries during fights, especially with how easily accessible diamond swords are. Is there any plans to change how legendaries are evaluated and how changes are implemented? It's kind of a loaded question,
So
if you ask me.
Vampire is going to be reworked, because the code is on GG. I can just easily move that to MindZ. Corsair actually is still a good legendary. The thing is, the damage difference is just unnoticeable. Because old Corsairs did, I think 2 hearts of more damage to a person holding a D sword. So I would say that nerf was necessary. I don't really know what to answer to your question. Can you just like give some examples of how legendaries get nerfed and get buffed again? You said. What's the question again? Can you?
Okay, so the question is, when legendaries become meta, like they're used by the PvP community a lot, they get nerfed until the point where they're unusable. But he thinks there should be an incentive to use legendaries during fights. He doesn't think that they should be nerfed. Is there any plans to change how legendaries are evaluated and how changes are implemented? So like the process of how you guys are implementing legendaries.
It's always an ongoing internal discussion, so we talk about that regularly.
Console Discord, because I've seen a lot of, complaints about Courser's Edge, for example. So we adjusted it.
44, you're in the call right now. Is there anything else you want to ask? I'm not sure if we're hitting your question right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what you want to know about process here.
Yeah, I was just curious how changes were developed. It feels like Legendary is used by everyone, and then all of a sudden it's nerfed into the ground. It feels like there are dramatic changes with not a lot of testing, and it kind of catches a lot of the community off guard when that happens. So you see a weapon like Corsairs being used in almost every fight to now popping up once in a blue moon. Or Vampire really not being used at all. So the question was mostly about how you guys work through coming up with changes rather than legendary specific question. But like what's the process like for creatively coming up with what the change should look like? And are there plans to introduce things like counters to legendaries instead of just changing the effect of the legendary itself?
Making a counter with another legendary is a bad game design because you instantly lose because you don't have that specific legendary. I would design the legendary so the natural gameplay it could be used as a counter. To answer your question about how we address your concerns and change of legendaries is that a lot of people using the legendary is not the direct reason we start balancing it. It's because people address those concerns in console. A lot of them did, especially about Courser's Edge. We looked at the Courser's Edge and it was basically hard-coded that was fitting to the old Mind Z's weapon damage. It was never changed since 2013, I would say. Because that value was basically adding 3 more damage to the person who's holding a D-sword. But that damage scale might have been correct in the past, but since we have our custom weapon damage, that damage was very, very off. So we had to adjust that.
Okay, thank you. Orca Hedge will ask, any plans for a forest/ice biome update in the future?
Halo would answer this question, but he's actually stepped away for a couple minutes. So I'll answer it. The snow biome has been a topic of kind of off and on discussion. We wanted to do a rework of it. Obviously, the whole thing with Doc happened, so we had to kind of reshift our focus. The snow biome right now should be better than it is, not just to navigate, but also in terms of gearing and everything else. Frostbane should be better than it is. I mean, Halloween notwithstanding. And generally speaking, it should just feel better to travel through because right now it's a lot of nothing and then maybe one town that's not worthwhile traveling to, like Frostbane or maybe even Klars. So my goal is, once we can get a kind of a hold on what we want to do in the shorter term for features and everything. Halo mentioned the cave system and another biome rework we want to do. The snow biome is in there too. It's just been kind of an eluding topic. But we have definitely had some design talks for how we would lay it out and some possible better lore implications too. So that's all I can really say on the snow biome.
Thank you. I don't see any new questions for Q&A. Feel free to keep asking your questions to repeat a question I might have missed. I'm going to ask my question now. Is there any plans to implement a tutorial for new players? other than the one in the deaf lobby?
Well, that's not really a tutorial. It's more of text on a sign.
Of course.
But anyway, we actually talked about tutorial not too long ago. We wanted to do one. Initially, the idea was, well, we can start with a smaller one with a redstone, and that was kind of something we were going to start taking off with. However, there are two problems with that. One, it wouldn't feel like Mine Z in a way, because if we were to have you walk through a scripted tutorial and then drop you into the world of Mine Z, that's not really gaining anything. And there's two things that we're really having to teach players who first log in. One, how to drink water, and two, how to loot a chest. One of those is already kind of a core Minecraft mechanic of looting a chest. The other one's drinking water, which I think with quality of life changes to maybe your status HUD or I don't know, better communication and clarity, either in the chat or otherwise, we would be able to kind of communicate that naturally. Perhaps with, the MindZ stats rework, we could actually have, goals that come up the chat, like, find a town, loot a chest, drink water, something like that. We would have these things come up, and you would kind of work to learn the game structure that way while still playing the game. We wanted to do a tutorial of the redstone, but it would be too rigid, and the server's kind of whole structure with how redstone and per player things worked wouldn't really allow for that. So that's when we started deviating to a discussion on trying to explain game mechanics kind of in real time as people are just traveling through the world. So we know, you guys largely know, we keep the action bar clear, with a couple of minor exceptions like Zerbia Depths' boss room. And I wanted to try and find a way maybe to show status effects and everything on that to teach players what's going on with them in a little bit more of a clear way. So that might be something coming soon. So that's kind of one of the big things that I've kind of pushed towards. We do need a new death lobby. The one we have is kind of bad. But anyway,
Bring back the old lobby.
we have it sitting somewhere.
I have
Anyway.
a follow-up question.
Sure.
So you said that there'd be in-game chat, like teaching the player. How would that work with the tip system? I think that MindZ has a lot of chat messages as is.
I wanted to actually kind of keep it out of the chat if we could, because the chat is overloaded as it is without even considering actually talking to people or using the radio.
So scoreboard, action bar, etc. Right?
Stuff like that. Yeah, within limits, of course. We can't just have pop-ups all the time because that gets annoying. But either way, I still do want to look at stuff like that. So that's something I might take up and look at some point, because that's something I kind of want to do. And it looks like Halo is back now.
Yeah, sorry for that.
Welcome back.
We covered snow biome and tutorial while you were away, Halo.
Gotcha.
Alright. Neon Crow asks, do you have a timeline as for when we could expect to see the priority map as you've mentioned?
I mean, the answer to what's on top of that right now for what's 100 priority map is bank, bank, and bank, as well as lag, and also lag. So there's your answer. But anyway,
There you go, Neon.
More specifically, we'll do a priority map. I know we said within the next month, and then Mojang had this announcement happen, so that kind of threw a wrench into everything, as per usual. Nothing's ever straight set and clear within any given month. But either way, we'll release one when we're ready. But I mean, our focus is definitely on the things we've talked about today.
Okay. Z-Gels asks, how are you guys going to bring back very valuable legendaries without them losing a lot of value?
That's probably a Marine
They
question.
will lose value. That's just what
Like
happens.
let's say Greybow, let's say, like the retired legendaries.
Like renamed legendaries?
An easy answer is just to bring them back, but not with the same name. You can kind of bring back the same format and leave the old ones as they were.
Mm-hmm.
Z-Jellies, does that answer your question?
Any examples you have?
I mean, it's everything's on a case by case basis. But say if we wanted to bring back something like the Void Bow or Rabbit Feet, you could make a similar item, but not give it the same name, so it doesn't have the exact same function as the old one. So the old one is even more valuable because it's stronger, right? But it's in limited quantity, so it's not going to be used as much.
I think that answers this question. Zorik the Great asks, Staff, will there be more event types? I would like to see a location rebuild event on a plot server. Could be awesome and find some hidden talent.
We've done rebuild events in the past a couple of times. I think the big problem with that is that there are cases where either there's one or two good builds, and we have to choose between one, and then no one is happy because obviously everyone has their own bias based off their build, or the alternative where there just isn't a build that fits sort of what we thought should go there. I feel like leveraging a plot server probably isn't the best use of anyone's time. I think it would be better set doing very clear build submissions. I think everyone can agree it doesn't feel great to build something and then have it denied. And the hardest part is providing any kind of mentorship or advice and then having that accepted rather than denied based off of, I guess, our opinion.
And
Now,
also,
there are other, I mean, what other events are you thinking about, though? Obviously, Bills was the one that was mentioned, but do you mean things like MineZ2 raids, like in-game events, or you just mean like extra, I guess, extra MineZ, but still related events?
Zorik, you can unmute if you want. Anything.
Anything, okay. I spoke about it in the past. Obviously, I had a bit of a learning curve with the treat chest automation, but that works now. And it is the actual first guaranteed event that can happen after it's used for Spookfest. It's something that will turn into supply drops, for example. And I feel like that is the first of a series of events that should be scheduled into the world so that there is sort of a structure to a MineZ week, and you could expect something to happen on certain days. Maybe not every day, but so for example, if you had supply drops on a limited basis, let's say like 2 times a week, so like maybe a Wednesday and a Sunday, then you could say, well, what happens on Saturday, for example? Well, Saturday is normally community events, so maybe we leave that one empty, but we say Friday night, we're going to do something like maybe we take Koth from GG and we implement that in a healthy way for MineZ, and we say that Friday is Koth night, similar to how HC Factions used to do a weekly sort of PvP event. I think there's a lot of room for expansion now that we have one working scheduled event, and that can expand greatly into other things. There's other areas that I've been interested in, especially raids. I actually wanted to start working on raids, and then obviously priority shifted towards banks and lag, but I hope to get back to that at some point. I think that creating a system of events that players can rely on and count on happening is something that is very healthy for the game.
Free Rob Doom asks, would you guys consider creating a balanced team to focus on balancing location and general loot tables? It seems like that area of the game has rightfully struggled lately with the departure of Doc and the shuffling of the staff team. But I think it'd be really great to have a group of players plus mini admins that can focus in on loot tables.
All of MineZ staff has an input, so using the mini admins is already something we do for very valuable and real world experiences and input. In terms of community balance changes, I do try to keep everybody in council kind of in the know of what I'm working on. And I do gauge feedback and everything there. I do recognize the fact that, the MineZ Community Council is still a little bit all over the map at some points. I do recognize that fact, but I do want to try and do a little better with that. I don't know if establishing a full balance team with just community members is the right way to go, but I am still open to that discussion a little more past that. But we are working on that, and there is definitely some work I've been doing, and obviously, for Halloween I did overbuff locations on purpose just to give some people kind of see how that works so far and to see if it was healthier. It was kind of, when we walked into Spookfest, for one, we wanted to provide good events and fun for everybody, but it was also kind of a little bit of a testing ground for new ideas that may stick in the game. So we tested new event ideas. Halo mentioned supply drops kind of being given to us from treat chests. And I've talked about how loot changes. We tested some very vigorous ones, or rigorous, whatever the word is, for see how the game would respond to that. So, I have some thoughts, and obviously Spookfest is near over. We have one more week of it. And I do need to start talking about how loot will look after it, because it looks like a lot of these locations will have to have some adjustments made. So, not a clear-cut answer, and that's what a lot of my answers are, because it's still a lot of discussion that has to happen for a lot of these bigger changes, but there definitely are points to everything that people have made in regards to loot. So I do want to try and make it feel better without making the game, gear up fully in 20 minutes type of thing.
Right. Connor564 asks, has server performance increased since the CPU and RAM changes?
So funny thing about that last night, I'm just going to be 100% open with it. For those of you who were around at 4 a.m. my time last night, I was sitting there, we deployed the update, and we had two things happen. One, we were trying to increase server performance. It required a configuration change, and that part of it caused an issue. And two, we had then initially we couldn't build the image because of something else that happened, which Laser had to fix. So of course the update came out. Server performance resources actually has not been increased as of at the very moment. That's something we're fixing later today, because we had a syntax issue on the back end. So of course it's 4 a.m, so people had to start cycling out. So we're going to get that fixed today, and then that should be able to properly answer that question.
Okay, so ask again tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe throughout the next week, and I'll see where everything looks. But yeah, that was kind of a snag we hit. That's why the update was. If you look at the Shoppo Twitter, I don't know if it's still up there, but there was a little bit of a struggle getting that update deployed because of that reason. But it's all good now. We have a laser tester on call to fix that.
Spire, I'm trying to read your question right now. The one where you guys say, do you guys agree that having staff, etc. I'll get back to you on that. Would you edit it so I can properly read it, though? I'm going to ask Gun Overdose's question now. Gun Overdose says, have you thought about bringing back invasions from Mindsea 2 and having groups of people in a PvE environment try to protect the towns from hordes when everyone gets a prize?
There's been talks of raids already. Halo's kind of talked about having raid events, and that's kind of part of the idea. So yeah.
Yes.
We
the
want
hardest
it.
part with that is determining what that system looks like and what server can host it. So, I mean, just to throw out some of the talks that we've had on this, if we go off of Mindsea 2's, which I thought was neat, but definitely would need some improvement. The big thing is, where does this happen? Does it happen on a PvE server so that you only have to focus on the environment that fights back, or does it happen on any server? And then the other thought was, well, maybe it could happen on any server, but do you need to protect the players that are doing it? Right? So like when we do wave events on the event server, for example, we're not turning PvP on as well. I'm just saying, well, you can kill the zombies or you can kill the players.
Gun, does that answer your question?
I think that this is where some community input would be greatly appreciated, is saying, would zoning an area for a invasion be useful? Like say 10 minutes before the invasion happens, that area is zoned for PvE so that you're safe in there and everyone can cooperate together to fight this invasion. And then they get, a fairly useful reward if they complete it. Or would players even be able to do it if there was no PvE zone for them and they had to worry about someone coming in to fight them? What I've seen happen and what I fear happening with events is that events turn into PvP brawls no matter what it is. So let's say that we have like a world boss or something that spawns. There's no guarantee that people wouldn't just use that as an excuse to fight each other instead of killing the world boss, which has been one of my fears.
Just to go on world boss, there already are world bosses such as giants. I would suggest taking an approach like that.
I
but...
don't mean giants.
Oh, I know,
don't mean like that.
I know.
I mean,
this is
much
something I would
more.
like to talk to you about later. But let's carry on with the Q&A. Yeah. Katoa asks, any word on nerfing zombie spawn rates in the middle of nowhere? I just had a bad experience at the Shrine Chest where I was chasing a group of players with my team, and had to turn around and pause the chase to deal with a Gordling and 2 regular zombies that were nipping at my heels.
Halo, I think this means we have to add more zombies.
No.
I hear that.
I think what the big concern for us has always been that we don't want to really cater towards one group too much. Now, I think that zombies do spawn more frequently around players, as we've seen. The chance for like a horde, for example, to accumulate happens a lot, especially if you have a large accumulation of players in the north, let's say in the gravel lands. And that area is supposed to actually have reduced spawning, and I don't know if that's actually working as intended. And I think that if any location were to receive something like that, it would be isolated to potentially the gravel lands to cater, I guess, a little bit towards PvP communities being able to fight there. But one of the draws from the world is that you do have to measure your time in a location and deal with the threats that do pop up.
I see some extra questions, but no questions that I want to ask at this time. If people would like to make more questions for questions and Q&A, that would be greatly appreciated. I am going to ask Zorak the Great's question now. Zorak the Great says, why did Laser come back? It's appreciated.
I mean, he was around for quite a while. When he came back for Win and Rogue originally, that was when High Life and Laser were like, we need to make Win and Rogue again. So they came back and became really active to work on Win and Rogue. Then with Doc's departure and everything, Laser stepped up to the plate. Adam came back too, and that's when their whole push to Kubernetes as the back end really took off. And I've personally talked to Laser many times, and his enthusiasm for just working on Chapo and delivering a quality experience. I mean, he's always had that, but he has a new vision for it in a way, and he's kind of. I think a safe thing to say for how things currently stand is that he's going to stick around for the time being. And
Laser has a big love for level design and
Mhm.
game development, and I mean we've seen that in some of the unique game modes that he makes. When he left not due to like any real extenuating circumstance besides that he was focusing on his family, and it just so happened that he was drawn back in during the initial shutdown of the coronavirus. And it's something that he is very passionate about, is completing sort of the vision that he has and then providing the tool base for us. The dev team right now is extremely healthy, I would say. And so there's really not a whole lot of pressure on any one dev like there has been in the past. So I don't really think there's a risk of Laser leaving. That might have been present with past, say, like prominent senior developers.
Free Rob Doom asks, what is the staff's opinion on public PvE / some form of PvE available to new players?
We're making it all PvE, guys. There's no PvP left anymore, Mindsy. I'm sorry.
Why would you say something like that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
This is
leaking all
being
of our
recorded.
Halo, you can comment on this. Hey, guys.
I can only comment on some of it, to be honest. There's been a lot of talks. It's very divisive in the staff team exactly what we want to do with this. I think that there's obviously Doc had mentioned that this was non-negotiable and that he was going to create a public PvE to facilitate, I guess, survivability and enjoyment for new players. but personally, I think that one of the draws of Mind Z is that you do need to survive, and that taking away any threat from players honestly takes away from a lot of the experience of the game. Now, I think we do have to acknowledge, though, that it is incredibly hard for a new player. Mind Z is not exactly a game that you can jump into and hope to survive if you are new. I think what would be more likely is some sort of earned PvE time, for example. Like that's what I would like to see, is where a non-premium player can earn access to PvE, whether that be from voting, some sort of quest system that comes out, something that they can do to get onto PvE for small amounts of time. I think that other servers have done that, and that seems to be fairly successful. And I know that people have suggested that too, where like non-premium players get like an hour on the PvE server or something like that, and that can be bumped up or something like that. I think that might be better than creating a PvE server and then you no longer have anyone that will go on to any other server from that, because why would they risk anything they have when they don't want to fight?
To add to that, I think it could be beneficial to have new players, like new accounts that join the server, getting like 6 hours of PvE access, and not like based on when they join, but like based on actual time in the game. So if they log out after an hour, they'll still have 5 hours left. Something like that would be cool. That way, like brand new players are like, oh, I have PvE, and then 6 hours go by, and then it's like, all right, hopefully you've learned enough. Like we're gonna take this off. It's going away. I don't know.
Underscore Recto as, I'm sorry, I'm gonna change the wording. Are you guys still adjusting giants? Are you guys still changing giants? Is that open to change?
Yeah, Recto, yeah, I looked at the code, and the damage equation for Stomp is kind of strange because it almost insta kills you if you're within like 3 blocks of the giant Stomp, and it does like no damage if you're like around 20 blocks ish. Giants will be reworked in the future, but we could have some sort of hotfix on that. But that's on the Stomp, but the HP or the damage have to be discussed between us first.
Recto, does that answer your question? Thank you. Alright. iTurl HD asks, any word on the Christmas season? Will there be any Christmas dungeons, Wandering Snowmans, rebuilds? Will there be special loot like Spoofest?
Christmas is my favorite time of the year. You can absolutely expect that we're going to spearhead that.
Yes.
I mean, you're going to see a form of the traveling snowman that you've probably never seen before. That's something that I really want to work on. I had a really fun idea for it. We've already talked about some rebuilds. The meeting after this actually is sort of the start of our planning phase for Christmas. I don't know if we would tease exactly what's going to happen with Christmas until probably mid to late November. Though it'll probably
Christmas lasts until February. Just wait.
Though it'll probably follow a similar structure to Spookfest in that there's all these unique items and stuff like that. These unique items are really fun to add in, and giving them a purpose is always fun. I know that some of you haven't liked the skeleton skull. I just enjoyed being able to throw it at players.
It's okay. Anyway, Neon Crow asks, on the topic of giants, is there a reason that giants and dungeons are inconsistent HPs? Like, why are they not consistent with main world giants?
I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Oh, sorry, that's not the question.
Oh.
Why are giants random HP in dungeons? They're not consistent within the dungeon. Sorry, I misread that.
That sounds like a bug.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like what?
I mean, if we're referring to Krubera, I believe Doc originally had a setup to where the Krubera giant was intentionally never changed from the original giants, even after the reworks. So that might have been a side effect of that.
It might be a side effect of that, but like Animos, Frostbane, those giants sometimes drop in 2 smite book hits, sometimes they take like what you'd expect from a giant. And it's just it doesn't it'd be nice if there was like Frostbane giant was about what you'd expect for being like basically half the dungeon. And maybe the Animos giant was maybe a little bit less health than that because you also are in a massive wave room that's kind of hard to survive a lot of times, like otherwise, like, or just make them all the same as Overworld, or just the consistency, like so they spawn at the same health. It's not a massive bug, just a very evident bug if you've run it enough times.
Free Rob Doom asks, would the team be open to more in-depth changes to giants? Dog talked about different types of giants, like Fire Giant, with different abilities / stats / difficulties. I think that kind of thing would be really cool to see with different loot tables, new items, different auras for D-swords and bows. Would also be cool to have giants be more friendly to new players, as well as far more challenging for veteran players.
I mean, we've been doing unique mobs since Doc left, and we're going to be adding more probably over the coming months. Whether or not we focus on giants or not is something we have to discuss and weigh the. I mean, a hot fix might happen. I think I'm going to say cautiously likely. A full rework or just completely new giants. That's a discussion that we need to have further.
Though it would be fun, Jacob,
It would be.
to see what the community thinks about having separate giants. So like if a giant did go on the west, would that giant be mechanically different from a different giant?
Yeah, maybe.
There are no new questions for Q&A. I believe we should wait 3 minutes for people to come up with new questions, and if there's no new questions, then we should wrap up this Q&A. Not one of those questions. How are y'all doing? How are y'all doing?
Doing okay. Peach, the answer to your question is fish.
I have a very good question, but I'm not gonna ask it. Halo, you already know what it is.
Get out of here, Pichu.
Real questions, please.
I guess I have an outward-facing question to those that like to build. There's been some gripe about how build submissions are done. Would it be more preferable if instead of saying this is a location, do whatever you want with it, I provide an exact description of what that location should look like to you guys? It takes the creativity out, but at least it lets you know that we're looking for something specific in that area so that you don't spend your time working that area.
Okay, so the builders in this question, do you mind if I take the time to talk to this with Halo? Like, I understand there's a lot of builders in this call right now that probably have some say, but I feel like we should have it focused. Halo, would you do you have access to the art team and whatnot? Because I feel like it would be a lot better for you to say what you want and then also have like a sketch of what you want to go with it, right?
I don't know if that is a good use of the art team's time.
Oh, I don't know.
It's a good idea. I just don't know if it's attainable.
Okay. But my issue is like you can always give a description. You could always put squares and squares and squares on whatever and put text behind them and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it will probably never match the vision you had inside your head, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's just a fact of life. I don't know if it necessarily needs to match my vision, but it does have to maintain a certain quality and facilitate some level of game design for it. And not every build submission reaches that.
Okay.
It's a lot of it's a lot of fun for community members to have that opportunity to make an impact in the world. It is just harder to do that if they're not given any direction, which I feel has been one of the downfalls of prior events.
Right. There's no reason for you to add a build that you don't think fits your vision, and then if you give too much of a vision, then we lose creative energy. Right. So like the work around that is like using common sketches. Let me see if I can find a really basic one that I can get off Google.
But yeah, this is a discussion that we can have outside of the Q&A, but it's something that I thought was interesting. There is no lore team.
I can definitely.
Halo,
talk
you and
to
I
you about
are
it
the
later.
lore team.
Yeah, but that's not a team.
Anything else?
And something like this, Halo.
Oh, I see.
Not,
Yeah, that's
not-
more in depth than a sketch, though.
Oh yeah. This is like an actual art piece. This is not a sketch at all. But like, you present this, it should look like this as an N, and then if you can't exactly get this, then just say screw it. It's gotta look like Noxmore in.
Mhm.
But like, just say this is kind of how it's supposed to look like. If you can't achieve that, then whatever, you can still submit it. And then
Gotcha.
give the detailed description as well. That's how I would approach it. Like, I like to do sketches for my builds, but again, like you said, it's very hard to get the art team involved with that, and it's not necessarily something they should be doing either.
Mhm.
Okay, I am going to look for questions again. I believe Rudy Rocker's asking a question. Rudy Rocker 3 asks, do staff believe there is a relationship between Spooky Fest loose changes / gearing / events and the game's popularity over the last few weeks? If so, do they have a plan to try to make the game more engaging like it is now?
There
during
definitely.
times? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. There definitely are, and Wes covered it in the chat as well as a response, but I'll kind of rehash what he said. Obviously, when we are talking about Spookfest and eventually Christmas as well, there is a balance to Mind Z. Everybody likes to joke about the balance, but we do try to maintain some sort of at least fairness for everybody. With that said, there is nothing wrong with us trying new things, but we like to try new things in kind of a unique way. So obviously, Frostbane's crazy loot, Chromir's overpowered. Everything's kind of crazy right now, and there's like a 5-10 pot chest on top of a Adara right now, or whatever it is. Either way, we're testing these things to kind of gauge what people's interest is and their gearing routes and everything, and kind of seeing how we can shake up the meta of the game. Because there's already an established meta, before Spookfest. Then we completely overhauled it for Spookfest, and I think it was actually healthier for the game. There's a couple of areas that should be tweaked, but I put a couple mythics at Chromir. Then I saw Spooky Chromir. I was like, okay, this is going to be even better. We'll scale it back, obviously, a little bit, but I still want to keep some of the value that the reworks gave us a little bit. And I saw a suggestion. I don't even know exactly when, but it was like a month ago or something, where somebody suggested, occasionally buff this town or that town and give people reasons to go there to have different PvP. I like that idea. Maybe not entirely exactly as they say, but that could be something I look at doing in the future. Give a certain town like a buff or at least changes to make it feel more worthwhile. But I like trying to do that to the whole world as well. That way it's not just the same thing, but obviously people try to find the most optimal gearing route and just abuse the heck out of it. So, it's a delicate balance without trying to completely shatter the community. So Spookfest was a testing ground. I'm taking notes out of it and going to apply it to the game as a whole, hopefully.
Chow Monster asks, has MindZ grown a larger player base at all in 2020?
We can grab those metrics, though. If I was just gonna eyeball it, I would say most likely. Just based off of the player counts that I see every day. If that's something that we can visualize, that'd be nice to show. Although I think a large part of that comes from advertising campaign in the coming months. I think that would really help more than what we do for outreach right now.
Does that answer your question, Cho?
Yes, it does. Sorry.
Though, I mean, just as a little tack on, I do think though that you would see, like, let's face it, so for example, like the biggest part of engagement I think for the Spooktober has been treat chests, because there's 15 of them a week. But I feel like that can't be the sole crutch going on, and I've already talked about this before, but I feel like you would see players peter out if that was the only thing we did going into November and December. And so that's sort of something we're trying to curve around.
Mm-hmm. Probably got about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
So
2 more questions then. I will be asking Zorix, and the next big question I find. Zorik the Great asks, does the staff team have any plans to catch cheaters? So many people are auto-clicking and reaching. Also, please reduce KB modifiers. We all know nobody is getting banned. Cheaters keep getting cheating.
Okay, well, I mean, the main thing I'll just stick with is saying, there are certain cheats that are harder to catch than others, and they are by nature going to take more time to catch. In terms of, generally you saying cheaters not getting banned, I mean, I can pull up the ban metrics and look, but there is definitely quite a few being banned per day. Obviously, as it gets, as people get more advanced at, I guess, using what we consider ghost clients, there it's obviously a, I would say takes a little more time to catch them, but we're not ignoring the fact. It's just that some are harder than others, and that's the benefit of bringing on more admins and training and everything like that. So it's an everlasting battle. It will never truly go away, and I don't imagine it ever will.
I just want to bring up Dentral's New Moon lists players that were banned in the last month. Not necessarily saying what they were banned for, but it does mention a large amount of people have been banned, which majority I would assume would be cheating, right?
Oh, most of them are always,
yes. Yeah. All right. One more question, guys. One more question.
Also, the support kit fusion's out. Anybody notice that?
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you.
I'm complete now.
It's such a high quality of life that you have no idea. Or maybe you have every idea, but still.
I remember playing with Shadow when we found out that it said coming soon and wasn't in the game.
Yeah, that was a classic doc feature.
Soon TM is no more.
Right.
Anything on the water spire drop rates? Yes, we are. Oh, there's a meme there that I am aware of. Thank you, Wes.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's something I need to work on. Balancing that number is actually kind of a pain, but I have to just sit down and do it.
Meme?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Put in the questions in chat. It's fun. But yeah, no, I'm gonna work on that. I need to work on all this fire loot and just dungeon loot. Looting, I'm probably gonna have another decently sized overhaul in the coming month. I want to sit down and do that. It's gonna take some time.
All right, that answers Smire 12's question. Anything on water spire drop rates and other spiders? iTurl HD asks, what does support kit fusion do exactly?
Shadow?
So if you open the menu GUI like you'd be adding dies or bandages, if you click the spot where the shears are, assuming you have another pair of shears, you'll be able to select another pair of shears to combine the two heal kits together into one. So any dies and bandages that are in there currently will be fused into one. There is a cap if you go over. So say if you have 6 red dies in one, you have 5 in another, everything will cap at 10.
but other than that, it's as pretty straightforward as what you would think it would do.
Nitro, does that answer your question? Okay. Jacob, if you want to answer any more questions, just say. Otherwise, I believe we will be wrapping up.
I think it's good to wrap up. We have a lot to unpack for our upcoming meeting, so I need to kind of get all of this stuff together on our Trello and go to that meeting and break Mind Z.
Okay, guys, we're gonna be wrapping up the Q&A now. If you have any more questions, go ahead and ask some questions for Q&A. Wes will be answering any more questions you guys have.
DM
Please
is bringing me.
Yeah.
Please
I
do
have a
not
quick-
spam the channel.
As long as they're serious questions, I don't care how much you spam me.
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
So I know I
Spam.
asked this earlier. I was wondering if the Q&A would be uploaded anywhere. I basically missed the entire thing other than my question, so I was just curious if that would be available.
I have a
So-
recording. I need to go through it, make sure everything's up and up, but otherwise probably.
All right. Would you be able to link that to somewhere in this Discord once it's like finalized?
You just post it in. Well, I'll post it in announcements, and you can post it
Awesome.
in Office.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Does that work for you, Jacob?
Sure.